But I think I will stop there and want to hear from Simon Weihofen, because he will have much more to tell us about sustainability and decarbonization.
Yes, and thank you, Patrick, for setting the scene and giving us an overview of sustainability beyond the SDGs. I think there's some background noise.
Sorry, that was me.
Super, no problem. And actually, I know that both of the next speakers, they will go a little bit more into the topics that you've raised and the questions that you've raised. So we'll get a bit more, maybe answers, maybe more details about that. And yes, with that, I would like to welcome Simon Weihofen. And Simon's mission is to transform companies towards sustainability. He got his master in sustainable business at Manchester Metropolitan University and his PhD at Technical University Darmstadt, working together with the Volkswagen Group on the topic of how to integrate environmental impacts in investment processes of companies. And since then, he has worked with the sustainability at the German electric utility company E.ON and ISTA, that's a company offering data-based products to make individual energy consumption more transparent. And currently, he's Director of Sustainability and Decarbonization at Viega Group. And today, he'll tell us a bit more about how he's delivering sustainability strategies there. And with that, Simon, you can share your screen.
Yeah, let me try to manage that one. That's always the worst hurdle. All right, I guess you
Working with technology, yes, you can see it. Perfect, looks really good.
All right, so hello also from my side, and thank you, Franziska, for this beautiful introduction. Yeah, before I start diving a bit deeper into sustainability, I have to actually present my company very short. So I'm not going to do any huge advertising, of course, because you, as a private client or customer, you wouldn't go into a store and buy our products, because that would your plumber basically do. So what are we doing? We have a purpose at Viega, which is basically phrased installing lifelines for the buildings of tomorrow. So we do have lots of competencies when it comes to drinking water hygiene, but also energy efficiency. So if you want to supply a whole building with drinking water and have that with a special kind of hygiene, then it also takes energy to actually have this hygienic factors in there as well. And we do have lots of competence of energy efficiency there, but also the whole topic of digital construction, building intelligence, modeling, all these kind of things, together with safety and last but not least, design and comfort, because you would also find some of our products in bath and kitchen. And there it wouldn't necessarily be behind the wall, but also pre-wall, or some drainage systems at the bottom. These are the kind of products which we are busy with, and also with the services which we are busy with. And there, a huge proportion is also concerning sustainability when it comes to our competences. Franziska, I think we are sharing the presentation anyway afterwards. At least it's now on video. So if you're interested in any of the other topics, as I just dived into regarding Viega, you can also scan this one of these QR codes and see, for example, our image video. I personally can recommend number 4, which is Sustainability and Climate Leaders video. It gives a pretty good overview about all the details and all the things we are currently busy with at Viega. Today, I'm only showing a little bit of what we are currently doing, simply because I don't have the time to talk about, I don't know. I guess I could fill a couple of hours, but Franziska said, no, you have got kind of 10 minutes, something like that. So I tried to keep myself a little short. I thought it would make sense to also showcase once again where this whole topic sustainability basically comes from in younger history, and that is from United Nations. There's a woman which is here on the picture here. It's Gro Harlem Brundtland. At these times, I think she was Norwegian Prime Minister, and she was head of a commission on environment and development at the United Nations. And there in this so-called Brundtland report, or it was headlined Our Common Future, the definition of sustainable development was framed like meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So pretty intergenerational topic, I guess. And that was a forerunner. I mean, there was Millennium Development Goals afterwards, and after the Millennium Development Goals, I think that must have been somewhere in 2012, 2013, when the United Nations finally adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which we also just saw in the talk before. Actually, took the time to research sustainablerobotics.org/about us, and there you could also see, but I just saw it a couple of minutes ago on the other screen. So there you could also see the same pictograms of the SDGs, but applied to robotics, which I personally find very cool. So highly recommended that. So sustainablerobotics.org/about-us. There you could see the robotics versions of those 17 SDGs. And those SDGs are basically the common sense which the whole United Nations have agreed on. Of course, there are underneath specific targets and also quantified, but again, it is more or less the North Star which we as humankind are heading to. And I think they have a runtime, a due date till 2030. We'll see if we can reach all of them. And states tend to put the idea behind each SDG into their current national legislation, which again, if you think about climate action, 1.5 degrees target, which we have there, and then sort of carbon emissions, that then again affects also us as companies. One other thing is when we talk about sustainability in business practice, there you would also find differentiation between economic, environmental, and social. Or we just saw environmental, social governance. That's basically a very similar differentiation. And there's a sweet spot. So the overlap of all these three circles, that would be counted as sustainable. So a solution which is actually covering all of these aspects, social, environmental, and economic aspects, that would be accounted as sustainable. And the basically idea just originated from John Elkington in a book called Cannibals with Forks. And I think it's from the year 1994 or something. You're gonna find out, but that is also a basic must read if you want to dive a little deeper into sustainability. So I just highlighted climate action when I just talked about carbon caps and 1.5 degrees target, etc. And here we see basically a short summary. I think it's basically from a book called from Bill Gates, where you might be very related to. I think the book's called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And there he basically differentiates between the categories below. So as you could see, most of the 35 billion tons of CO2 emissions annually worldwide originate from industry production, which we can certainly account also my company Viega for. And then there's also 27% originating from power generation. Of course, producing our products, again, we also need a lot of electricity and gas, and so we can also count ourselves in, as well as transportations, logistics. In the end, when talking about our products, then certainly a piece of heating and cooling would also be accounted to Viega indirectly. So you could see from a company perspective, you are mostly affected by several of these categories, and therefore it is a relevant issue for a company. When we talk about CO2 emissions of companies, we mostly differentiate between scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3. The biggest differentiation is basically the lever, so the amount or the influence which you have on your CO2 emissions. Scope 1 and 2, these are accounted as direct emissions from your direct operations. So there's a huge lever for you as a company to change certain things so that you can actually reduce your emissions or avoid them at all, right? And then we can say scope 3 can be differentiated between upstream, so everything which comes to you in your supply chain from your suppliers to your gate of your production plant, production site, that has got some sort of CO2 backpack with it. And then, you know, if you finish your product and sell it on the market, then it might also cause, or best case, avoid CO2 emissions in the use phase. And as we just heard, you know, if you think about circular economy, you would also need to recycle it, etc. And that basically, this is idea of scope 1, 2, and 3 that basically originates from the so-called greenhouse gas protocol. And the greenhouse gas protocol is basically the global accounting standard when it comes to accounting for carbon emission based in business or caused by business. So as you can see here a little bit in detail, scope 1, this is from your own company facilities, your own owned company vehicles, and that is basically your homework which you have to do if you want to deal with sustainability and decarbonization. You have to try to get this net zero, as we say it, as soon as possible. You only have an indirect influence in scope 2. That is, for instance, most popular, the electricity which you consume. So you get electricity from the grid, and you don't necessarily have a big influence as a single company on how clean is the electricity which comes from your grid. Nevertheless, you can choose to actually produce it your own, and then, you know, you would get it into scope 1 emissions, or basically decrease scope 2 emissions. That would be the accounting behind it. And then we have got a second category of indirect emissions, which is actually by 13 categories pictured here. Scope 3 indirect emissions. So there your sphere of influence basically gets smaller. If you think about business travel, of course, you can think about how often you travel, so you could try to reduce it. But if you want to travel, if you need to travel, let's say per plane, you don't really have an influence on which airline, you know, uses which planes, etc. And if that is carbon neutral or not, you know, you could think about offsetting. Of course, that's a little lever which you can take, but other than that, you know, your influence is getting smaller and smaller. And yeah, basically the tragedy is that if you compare the size of scope 1, 2, and 3, then by far the biggest impact is always scope 3. So that is basically the biggest category in terms of figures and values and CO2 emissions. And yeah, unfortunately, mostly the one where you have only limited, you know, influence on. To finish it up, what can you do actually if you think about sustainability, and if you want to get a company transform it to sustainability, then you have two dimensions: the world today and the world tomorrow, right? And today you have to think about mitigation strategies, so good ideas and clear goal to change human behavior and to decrease the carbon emissions of your companies. That is classical mitigation. But then acknowledging the fact that climate change is basically real and it's pretty tough to stop. So even if we can manage to get down to our beloved 1.5 degree scenario, then, you know, we would still, you know, see sea levels to rise. We would see extreme weather conditions. We would see refugees, climate refugees, all these kind of things. And that is, if you acknowledge that fact, that means for the future, for tomorrow, you need adaptation strategies. So strategies, how you can actually cope with the impact and cope with the risk which is coming to your company, right? These are the two things you have to keep in mind. Today, you can do mitigation. For tomorrow, you need to do adaptation. So what does that mean for Viega, basically? Last year, Viega was able to communicate its 4 sustainability targets, and by far the most important one is Viega becomes climate neutral at the latest by 2035. This is, you could argue, this is homework, as this is mainly scope 1 and 2 emissions. But if you think of our products, so let's take one of our most popular products, which is simply a press fitting. So that is kind of a connector which connects 2 ends of a pipe. Let's say a copper fitting in a copper pipe system for drinking water. Then that producing that pipe, if you want to smelt copper, then you would need 1,000 degrees. So that is quite a lot of energy in your production, which you need to get climate neutral. And that is quite a challenge. So we are, of course, thinking about getting rid of gas consumption, reducing and avoiding that, and electrifying our production processes, digitalizing them, and also, getting renewable electricities by either purchasing it via power purchasing agreements or actually via producing it our own. These are the kind of business cases we in the strategy department have to calculate through in order to then again testify it if that is actually operational, doable, etc., etc. So quite a big task, even if this seems to be a hygienic, a target which nearly everyone is quoting nowadays. But we don't want to achieve this target by simply doing some offsetting like other companies are doing. So we want to reach that target, 0 CO2 emissions without any offsetting. Second one is sustainability as a solution for our customers. So our products, can they play a part? Can we design our products in a way that, first of all, we can recycle them, but also that in their use phase that they can actually put a positive benefit in the whole sustainability discussion, right? So that we don't consume electricity, but maybe produce electricity in some way or the other, or that we can have actually products with regard to hydrogen transportation, with regard to heat pumps, all these kind of things. Can we produce products which can actually help dealing with all the sustainability issues we see, that a positive impact of our products and services. Then sustainability always comes with transparency. Sustainability products, reports, reporting each year your progress, also your failure, where you're behind a schedule. This is important to also have some sort of good reputation, because otherwise you would only do greenwashing. And if you showcase things where you currently are failing or behind schedule, then I think you are simply also more credible when talking about sustainability. But also transparency on our products. So we recently published our first environmental product declaration, which is basically over the whole life cycle of that one product, a document telling, okay, in life cycle phase 1, especially at the mine of a copper mine, there are certain environmental impacts which occur in terms of CO2 emissions, but also other environmental impacts. And there we are fully transparent on the total environmental impacts of our products. And we are currently planning to publish a couple of additional EPDs in this year, so that we can actually cover more than 85% of our products by those environmental product declarations, so that we are not only transparent on our sustainability performance, but also on the sustainability impact of our products itself. And the last and most important target is responsibility and commitment as key to success. That basically says that not only the CEO, but also his direct reports do have in their bonus agreement sustainability targets, which are strictly dedicated to their area of responsibility. So finance guy would also only have finance related, so as chief finance officer would only have finance related sustainability targets in his annual bonus agreement. And depending on the performance, he would get less or more money at the end of the year. That's also important to keep the whole thing running. So having also the right incentives behind the scenes. And that is basically the end of my short presentation. And I hope I didn't have a look at the clock when I started talking, Franziska. I think I hope I could manage to keep in time, right?
Yes, no worries. You're on time.
Thank you very much.
Yes, perfect.